Okay, Bruchim Habayim, everyone. Welcome to this Kinus. I just want to introduce. Shh. Chavra, Chavra. We're gathered here today on a very special time on Gimmel Tammuz, a day when every hour of these 24 hours, especially as Bochurim, is supposed to be used to the fullest. Standing 30 years after Gimmel Tammuz, when the entire crowd, Kenai Nahara sitting over here, are Bochurim which were born after Gimmel Tammuz, and we constantly are hearing about his kashrus, connecting to the Rebbe through the Rebbe's Torah, and so on and so forth. But many of us want to understand, what does it mean connecting to the Rebbe 30 years after Gimmel Tammuz? How could I have a real relationship with the Rebbe the same way someone, a Bacher who was learning in 770 in the Yuds, had a connection with the Rebbe? And what does it mean that connection that I'm going to have with the Rebbe 30 years later is dafka through the Rebbe's Torah? So Baruch Hashem, we're here today with very special guests. Rabbi Herzl Pevsner, Mashpia in Timchit in Morristown. Rabbi Chaim Maran Chazan from the Yeshiva in Nyack. Rabbi Moshe Garaya, Shliach in New Jersey. And Rabbi Yitzi Lowenthal, Shliach in Denmark, who will take us through this journey together. So give your utmost attention and listen very carefully, because this could be very interesting.
Good day, everybody. I remember in a Sikha in Tov Mem Tes. At that time, I was a yeshiva bacher in London. We would hear the Sikhs in the middle of the night, so we would usually come running down in our pajamas. I still remember what color my pajamas were. And we're listening to the Sikha. And the Rebbe says, and I don't remember what it was in reference to, the Rebbe said, "Me soll das übergeben," something, zu die was sind nicht da. And then the Rebbe said, "It's from die was sind da, aber nicht da." And then the Rebbe continues, "Aber it's from die was sind nicht da, aber da." And at the time, my understanding was that Rebbe was referring to people that were present or not present in 770. But later on, I realized that the Rebbe was also talking to people that were chronologically not born at that time. But the Rebbe was saying there can be people that have been present by the Rebbe but not necessarily there. And then people who perhaps were not physically present by a certain Farbrengen or event with the Rebbe, but there is the possibility to be there and to be connected to it. So once upon a time, like you've heard many Farbrengens and stories, maybe the Kayach HaBchira, the power of choice, was not quite as strong. I'm reminded, across the street there's a place, Hadar HaTorah, which is where I was dormitoried, where I slept when I was yeshiva bach in all the Torah. And one time during the Rebbe's Farbrengen, there was a thief who decided, a Schwarzer, I'm probably allowed to say that anymore, I don't know, who decided he's going to break into the dormitory because he was convinced that he couldn't imagine that there would be one Bocher that's not by the Rebbe's Farbrengen. Obviously, everybody's going to be by the Rebbe's Farbrengen, and he'll break in and he'll be able to steal in the dormitory. Unfortunately, or fortunately, there was one Bocher who was still sleeping. Even the guy, he surprised the Ganef. I don't know if the Ganef said, "What you're doing here?" But at that time, not to be by the Rebbe's Farbrengen, not to be present when the Rebbe was coming out was something, I don't know if your Bechira was taken away, but it was almost like that. Nowadays, for us to be connected to the Rebbe, this is something that we have to make a proactive choice. And right here, we're sitting down and we can have one person that chooses they're going to connect to the Rebbe and the other person that hasn't yet made that choice. So without further ado, we're going to ask our prestigious panelists to give us thoughts, words, and perspectives on how to connect to the Rebbe. Rabbi Garari.
Okay. So I guess I'll start with an Inyan Kloli. And sure many of the Bochurim are familiar with the Sikha, where the Rebbe speaks about the names Menashe and Ephraim. Menashe is Kinashani Elikim. Menashe, Yosef named his son Menashe, and the Eibishter helped him come through what he had experienced in the past, or his connection to the past, or his longing for the past. Hifrani Elikim Be'eretz Ani, that even in Mitzrayim, Hifrani Elikim, that Yosef was able to multiply, to succeed. But in that same Sikha, I'm just saying it b'kitzur because I'm sure that the Bochurim know it, but in that same Sikha, there's one Seif where the Rebbe talks about the pasuk, "Ve'atosh ne'banecha ne'ladim lecha beretz Mitzrayim." And the end of the pasuk is Kiruvim v'Shimon, Liheim. The pasuk says that now these two sons of yours that were born in Mitzrayim are going to be Liheim, they're my children. So the Rebbe asks a question: why does it say the words Hanelodim L'cha Be'eretz Mitzrayim, that were born to you in Mitzrayim? It's already Parshas Vayechi, and everyone knows where Ephraim and Menashe were born. And the Rebbe explains that Dafke, because they were born in Eretz Mitzrayim, Dafke because they were raised in Ervas Haaretz, and nevertheless they go on Beruchai of Yankiv Avinu. This is why Liheim. This is the raya that Liheim, and this makes them Liheim. Liheim is under the Werter meine Kinder. When the Yankiv Avinu of the day, when the Rebbe says on Liheim, he's talking about Menashe and Ephraim. He's talking about the Banecha and Elodim L'cha Beretz Mitzrayim. Even those children that were born in Mitzrayim after Yosef was away from the Giluyim of Yankiv Avinu of Eretz Yisrael. But nevertheless, these children go in the Beruchai of Yankiv Avinu, Liheim, these are meine Kinder, these are the Rebbe's Kinder. So I'm sure we can still elaborate how we go Beruchai Shel Yankiv Avinu and what that means, but I think that there is, just to reiterate something that Mistama you already know, but to reiterate the concept that every single one of us is Liheim, we're the Rebbe's Kinder. And the fact that we're Neladim L'cha Beretz Mitzrayim is not a stira. It shouldn't be, and it cannot be a contradiction that we can be Liheim, we can be the Rebbe's Kinder, despite the fact that it's Neladim L'cha Beretz Mitzrayim, despite the fact that we're born and living through a time that feels like the Meitzarim Ugvulim, like the darkest Golos that we've seen in our time. So I'm just going to share this as a Hagdama to what I think we can explore. What does it mean that despite the fact that it's Eretz Mitzrayim, nevertheless, we are Liheim? So, and maybe I have to go back to you, Yitzi, or should I pass it on to the... all right, Rabbi Chazan, let's get a little bit more practical.
It's a very broad topic. Like it's chap one aspect. Everything in Chassidus talks about milmat l'mayla, milmayla l'mat. So in the Skashrus, there's your feeling towards the Rebbe, and then there's the Rebbe's caring about you. I remember I once heard from Ramelach Tzibel of Hashalom, the Mashpia Morristown. He said when he was a Bocher, he was learning in Lut, in the Pardes. And a whole bus from Panovich came with this Kislev, to hear the Fabrengen of the Mashpia there, Reb Chaim. And some of the Bochum were serious Bochum, some of the Bochum from Panovich that came, and some of them were more late. They came for the Mashke, came for the hoo-ha. And there was a Bocher there, Kinus said too much L'chaim, and he turned, and L'chaim was talking about Iskashus. He was saying that Chassidus requires a Rebbe. You can't just learn Chassidus without having a Rebbe. His Aussprach was that we can't sign of a Insel und nehmen a Samachvov. You cannot take a Samachvov on an island and go and learn Samachvov, and you'll be a Chassid. Because you have to have some Chassidus is a Likus, and to bring a Likus into Seichel, you need a Rebbe. So that was the topic of the discussion. So this Panovich Bacher turns to Reb Shlomo Chaim and he says, "We are Mekusher Tabai V'Rova. We learn Gemara Mekusher Tabai V'Rova. What do we need a Rebbe for?" So Reb Shlomo Chaim answered him, It's very nice you're Mekusha Abai Varava, but the question is Abai Varava Mekusha to you? So there is an aspect that one of the ways of coming to a feeling is think that the Rebbe is thinking about you. Rabbi Groner once related a story that the Rebbe once asked him in the middle of a Helen about a certain person that used to come to 770 Mizman. He asked him, why we haven't seen this person in a while. So he didn't know. And then turns up by Mincha, this guy shows up. So Rabbi Groner went over to him afterwards and asked him, how come Shalom Aleichem, we haven't seen you for a while. What's happened? He said he was on the train and he was driving past Kingston Avenue. He thought he hasn't seen the Rebbe in a long time. And he decided he's going to get off and daven Mincha with the Rebbe. So he thought it's because he thought about the Rebbe. Meanwhile, because the Rebbe asked about him, that's why he was Nasir. Like it says in Yom Yom, when you look at someone strong, there's a very famous sikh where the Rebbe talks about this when you get to Iskashus, that when the Rebbe thinks about a chassid is a regesh of Iskashus to the Rebbe. The Rebbe had in his room, people today don't even know what it is. There's a concept called index cards. Index cards is, you write, it used to be you didn't have a telephone on you didn't have numbers on your telephone. You didn't have a cell phone, so you didn't have numbers on your cell phone. So you had to keep your numbers somewhere. Or you had to keep any mafteach. How do you make a mafteach? You had these cards, and you put it in alphabetical order, and then you could find anything you want. So the Rebbe had a mafteach of all the shemus of people that wrote to him, and his man he used to look through it, and he was Mailadas, the Chassidim. So that's one aspect that a person focuses on, is on the Rebbe's feeling towards us. And you can be ma'arich on this very lot. There's a lot to say about this topic. But that's one aspect of the Rebbe's yachas to us.
So I just want to add one thing. I'm younger than the others. And honestly, the premise of how are we Mekusher now was a little I remember being a bacher, and it was brought up once at some Yud Shvat or something like that. They said there's going to be a Farbrengen talking about how to be Mekusher now. And I thought that's a very interesting topic. I haven't heard anything on the matter. Why? Because all of our chinuch is being Mekusher now. Being Mekusher now is the reality. This is the reality we've been in. This is the reality we've been born into, practically. And this is what it's about. If somebody would come into 770 and Tafshin Lamed and start complimenting the Bochurim, it's so nice of you that you're Mekusher to the Rebbe, people are going to look at them funny. Get out of here. The Rebbe's a Rebbe. Naturally, the Rebbe has Chassidim. Nowadays, the Rebbe's also Rebbe, and he's our Rebbe. Naturally, the Rebbe has Chassidim. What his kashrus is all about is not establishing a connection. His kashrus is about cultivating a connection, bringing out a connection that we already have. It's not, right? A bacher starts learning, there's naturally things he doesn't know how to learn himself. He comes into yeshiva, he doesn't know how to learn Teisus himself. He starts learning. Eventually, over the course of time, it's an accomplishment. Al derech zeh, a bacher could think, hey, I'm coming into yeshiva and I need to learn skills, and I need to learn Torah, and I need to learn 100 blat Gemara Baal Peh, and also I need to become a Mekusher. You are a Mekusher. You need to start living more tuned in to that inyan of his kashrus. And ultimately, when we look at it that way, it's not a task that maybe I didn't accomplish or did accomplish. It's a matter of fact. This is my life. I am a chassid of the Rebbe, and now I'm going to live more, tune in more to it.
So on a slightly more non-abstract level, at a certain point, maybe the Yedid Dove will give me the exact details, but in my hazy 14 or 15-year-old mind, I have a memory of the Rebbe telling us that everybody has to write into the Rebbe 3 things that he had taken on, a new hachlata, or a new thing, during the past year. And most importantly, the Rebbe said, don't write it to me directly. I want you to write it to your mashpia. And your mashpia is going to then send it on to me. Now, the result of that was that although the Rebbe had been speaking then quite a lot about mashpiyim, there was even, by the way, a certain time, not for Bochurim, but elections for mashpiyim in Lubavitch. That was in the Tavshin Lamed Vav, I think it was, or Tavshin Lamed Zayin. And all of the mashpiyim received a Kuntras Avos Yisrael. Later on in Tavshin Memtes, the Rebbe on Yud Aleph Nissen took the leftover, if I can call it leftover, the box of Kuntras Avos Yisrael, distributed it, about 300 of them, to the people that were present. I, Baruch Hashem, was zeicher to receive that Kuntras. But at the time, the Rebbe distributed it to each one of the mashpiyim with a signature. The Rebbe wrote his signature on each of the Kuntresim. And there was the idea that everybody, Anash, needs a mashpiyah, but especially every bacher. And this is something that Rebbe spoke about multiple times. So I'd like to be ma'arido that when it comes to his kashrus, there are certain, shall we say, olive base foundations. One of them is learning Rambam, learning Chitas, learning the Rebbe's Takonos, learning the Rebbe's Teiros. But another one of them is definitely having a mashpiyah who one is able to consult. So I think maybe we're going to ask Reb Moshe, who is Zohar Beit Tvei, is in the Rebbe's Torah, to talk to us a little bit about his kashrus through the Rebbe's Torah.
Okay. What don't they know?
It's not what they don't know, it's what you don't know.
What I don't know, okay. So, a while ago, I was asked once, I was asked to speak to a group of Bochurim that were making a siyum through the Halikut program. They were finishing a krachel, Likut Sichos, and so they called me up from through a Zoom if I could say a few words. So that week we had learned in the project Likut Sichos schedule, we were learning the Sicha of Va'era, where the Rebbe asks the question, how could Moshe Rabbeinu ask Lama Harei Isa? And the Rebbe starts out the Sicha that there are sometimes in Rashi there are inyanim mufloim, incredible ideas. And the Rebbe goes through the Sicha, talks about the Guf versus the Neshama, the Ovis versus Moshe Rabbeinu. And at the end, the Rebbe says something very, very beautiful. The Rebbe says that being that the Yidden could not go out of Galus without Emunah, if Moshe asks Lama Harei Isa, Hashem is going to say Va'era el Avram. By saying Va'era el Avram, it's going to be Mamshech Emunah b'Pnimiyus, and then the Yidden, if a Yid that's not shaykh to the Geula, will become shaykh to the Geula. In that Sikhet, there was no comeback to the Inyanim Mufloim. Didn't anywhere say what the Rebbe was referring to. And we learned Pshat that maybe this vort itself is an Inyan Muflo. That the Rebbe is Moshe Nefesh, Moshe Rabbeinu is Moshe Nefesh, to ask Lama Harei Isa, and because of that not go into Eretz Yisrael to help one Yid to be Mamshech the Emunah b'Pnimiyus. And then I said that in every single Sicha there are Inyanim Ufloim. Even if the Rebbe doesn't say that this Inyan is Inyanim Ufloim, in every single Sicha there are Inyanim Ufloim. What I mean by Inyanim Ufloim in this specific context, because only a Rebbe can call something Inyan Nifla, but I mean that in every single Sicha, even if it's a Siyum on a Masechta, even if it's a Knech na Rashi without a Yeinish Shel Torah at the end, clearly every single Sicha has something in it that will talk to you in your personal life. We know oftentimes the Rebbe would tell people, I already answered this in the Shabbos Tikkun Farbrengen. I heard just Punkte Shabbos from someone, his father lived in Montreal, and he would ask the Rebbe, and this Yid would send the Rebbe questions, and the Rebbe would write to him, Yizdaber im Mem Zayin Gimmel. Mem Zayin Gimmel was Rebbe Nachum Zev Gringlas, who was the Olav Shalom, who was the Mashpia. So this younger man, he writes back to the Rebbe, why do I have to go through Rebbe Glinglas? Why can't the Rebbe answer me? And the Rebbe wrote back, I'll answer this in the Shabbos Dike Verbringen. To look it up, and I think it was Vayigash Tavshin Chavtes. But the point was that the Shabbos Dike Verbringen contained, often the Rebbe referred to it as Yechidus, and the Shabbos Dike Verbringen contained answers to people's questions. And therefore, when we learn a Sikha, there are answers to our specific questions. Amal, you need a mashpia to help you decipher it. What's going to happen if you learn through the Sikha? And obviously, it's during lunch or during supper, so you're learning quickly, and you don't find that there's an answer for yourself. It's very simple. You have to learn it again. And what happens if after 2 times, the answer isn't there? Learn a 3rd time. Once you truly master the Sikha, you will see how that Sikha is talking specifically to you. And understand that Bochurim don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to go into the concept of Kamus versus Eichus. And Amol, there has to be a union of Kamus, Amol, there has to be a union of Eichus. B'Shas, we learn the Rebbe's Torah. And we learn it again and again and again, until it becomes clear to us that not only will that Inyan in Torah shine by us as an Inyan in Torah, but that Inyan in Torah actually answers the questions that we're looking to answer, that we need answers for in our own hadracha, in our own growth, in our own living as a chassid. So while this is just the tip of the iceberg, as they say, but I wanted to jump a little bit, be a little bit practical. I don't know how practical this is, but it's a little to begin the practical, that in every single word of the Rebbe's Torah, besides the fact that the learning itself is mekasher, which we can still talk about, but also the Rebbe sends us answers or adracha in our daily life through the Rebbe's Torah that we learn. So when there's asay l'charav and there's the idea of having a mashpia, there's also an idea of pashut delving into the Rebbe's words and finding in those words not just the taich and the Rashi, but also the taich in who am I and what am I supposed to do.
Rabbi Chazan.
Again, it's an extremely broad topic, the Rebbe's Torah. One prat, what I could say, which I do myself, is because the Rebbe's Torah is so broad, so I have a sdorim in the Rebbe's Torah. In other words, to my mind, it's a bit funny to say this, but to my mind, one of the saddest things is that the Sikha is written, I'll say that parshas, because people look at it like Vertlach on the parsha, and you have a Divrei Torah by the Shabbos table. The Rebbe's talking about an Indian and a sugya, and we're learning like a Dvar Torah. So there's an element of learning the Rebbe's Torah as Pashta Torah, sugya, an Indian. So if you want to learn 3 sikhs and Hashgacha Pratis, find out where they are. In the middle, what parsha are we? Parshas Chukas. You'll be learning. Last week it was Parshas Kaich. There was a sikha about Hashgacha Pratis. So you'll be learning. It doesn't matter the parsha. The Rebbe's Torah is an Indian. So I'm talking as already after you've come with the premise that you're learning the sikhs on the parsha. But there's an element to learn the Rebbe's Torah out explaining you something. That's one Indian. And then Pashta makes Eitz Torah is to make a seder, whether it's in Igres, whether it's in Rishimas, whether it's in the Rebbe's Mamorim. I had a tkufa where I started from Tafshin Yud Aleph, and I was learning a few pages of the Rebbe's Mamorim every day, and you'd be surprised how fast you finish the year if you learn 3 pages of a Sefer Mamorim every day. So that it could be done in Igres, it could be done in Kudisiches, and then you push it cover. It changes your whole. You get abyssal the Rebbe's way of looking at things, however much we're able to say that. Yamin Klein, he said whenever he thought that he knew what the Rebbe was going to answer something, the Rebbe answered differently than he thought. In other words, he never really captured the Rebbe's way of looking at things. But at Vos, you can see that someone will say something and you say, that's not the Rebbe's Gisha, that's not the Rebbe's approach.
So I want to say first about what Rabbi Lowenthal spoke about finding mashpiyim. Why? Because it's just a very practical topic. Because I see Bochurim who are mostly older than you, and sometimes they don't have a mashpia, and they didn't have a mashpia, and it's for many years. So I'll just say this, just a very practical word. A big part of why it's hard to get a mashpia is accessibility. You're going to try to find the guy who was a nice counselor to you in camp, so now he's going to be your mashpia. Chances are he doesn't have time for you. Chances are you won't have time for him to call him, and therefore you're just not in touch. It's not necessarily always so comfortable because you have a yiras hareimamus. You're in awe of your teachers. Go to your teachers. And amongst your teachers, you can find a mashpia who could push it, touch base with on a constant basis. He sees you every day. He knows half the things you're doing anyhow. In 5 minutes, once a week, you're going to accomplish a lot more than some out-of-town, off-site mashpia, and you're going to gain so much from it. So that's just one piece, and I'll dedicate a few words to the Rebbe's Torah. Obviously, the Rebbe's Torah is very important for us to study. We're Chassidim, and it's so much part of it. But every bacher needs to take the opportunity to really get into the Rebbe's Torah. You have to become a fan of the Rebbe's Torah at a certain point, and not just learn out of Kabbalah soil. It's what we got to do. This is what it has to become our inyan. Personally, as a bacher, the most transformative entry of mine to the Rebbe's Torah was before Shavuos. I was a young bacher, and I decided with my chavrusa that we're going to learn all the Rebbe's sichos on Shavuos. We saw how the Rebbe took apart the Yom Tov, built up the Yom Tov, explained the Yom Tov, illuminated the Yom Tov, in a way we didn't get learning the one sicha a week and the two sichas a week. It completely blew our minds. And you know what? That got us hooked. Then we got into it. There's two ways of learning Likutei Sichos. You could take a krach of Likutei Sichos and pick what interests you most. You could take a krach and look what interests you least. But regardless, you're going to always find tremendous wisdom, pashat kepshutei. Personally, I've always found that Lubavitcher Bochurim have an edge over other Bochurim in learning. If you go talk a sugya in learning with a bacher who doesn't learn in a Lubavitcher yeshiva, he might know a lot, he might know a tremendous amount, but in clear thinking, in klarkeit, in reasoning, Lubavitcher Bochurim have a maila. It's not your own maila and it's not your own yichus. It's simply the Rebbe in Likutei Sichos consistently analyzing things gleich, to the point. You ask a shaila, you give a teretz, and it's not straight. It's not going to work. It's noch aus nicht glattig. There's no other sefer that uses the term glattig besides for Likutei Sichos. If something is not glattig, it doesn't sit. Everybody thinks glatt is for kashrus. By the Rebbe, glatt is for a svara. A svara in Torah needs to be glatt, and it makes you think, pashit, glatt. You are able to learn Torah quicker, more clear. Right? And it brings tremendous chayas to limut ha-Torah b'chlal. Obviously, it connects us to the Rebbe that not only should our actions be what the Rebbe tells us to do, but the way the Rebbe thinks should become part of who we are. Right? And ultimately, there's the no nafshi kasavas yehovis, where the Rebbe is present in his Torah, and to the point that, as Rabbi Grari explained, you can find pashat hayros of what's going on in Torah. So it's a good idea. Find the opportunity whenever it is to put yourself into taking a topic, learning it from various angles, and you'll push it, get into it. You'll become enthusiastic about it.
On the topic of mashpiyim, I just thought it's good to clarify. There was two biftzes of the Rebbe mashpiyim. One was in Tov Shel Lamed Vav, I think it was, that the Rebbe made mashpiyim of kehillas, of shuls. In Karnaitz it was block mashpiyim, because there was a lot of anash on each block. That was one mitzvah, and then the Rebbe gave them the Kuntas Avos Yisrael. There was another mitzvah that started later, the Mems, of Asei L'Charav, that every person has to have a personal Asei L'Charav. And the Rebbe addressed the issue, which is often you speak to Bochurim, this is a big part of the issue, that Bochurim have a naive, idealistic expectation that they're going to find someone that they could look up to and see shleimus and not find any chesronis. There's a Yiddish expression, als beiner in ish doba keiner. You're never going to find a person, krutze choymer, ähnlich of Adamarischen, that are b'shleimus. So the Imarav Deva, the Rebbe speaks about it in the Sikha, when it talks about that Mashpia has to be Imarav Deva Malach Hashem Tzvois. So what it means practically is, from what we have, you take the best one you have, but don't get concerned that he has chesronis, because it doesn't matter. For you, he's more advanced than you, and he can help you. And the Be'ikr, what the Rebbe talks about is that you're negei b'dover. You don't see things, when you talk about yourself, so you don't see things in a objective fashion. So even if he's not perfect, and even if you're higher than him in Avedis Hashem, but he sees things objectively, and he can help you. I'll just finish off. Bashkocha Prat is yesterday. I was sitting by a Fabrengen. I can say who it is. Rabbi Yehuda Weg from Oklahoma. And he was mentioned this nekuda of a Bocher going over to his mashpia, how important it is that Bochurim, you're going to have to speak to the mashpia more often. And he was saying one time he was going through the Polish should call it a shvachat kife. In the Litvish it's called a rifyon. I don't think we have a word for this in our lexicon.
Depression.
But depression, whatever, that's a goyish word. What the Alter Rebbe speaks about in Akdam Shayach Emunah, Sheva Yipot Tzadik V'kom, maybe. So it was a shtickle tzad he wasn't learning, and he went over to the Melech, and he says to the Melech, he was learning in Morristown, and he says, I'm not learning, I'm not using my time properly. So the Melech told him, learn this Perek Tanya, I think it was Perek Hey Mistoma, and it'll give you a chayes in learning. He said, I learned Perek Hey. He says, okay, learn a different Perek, maybe. I don't know what it's Perek Gimmel or Perek Tammuz. Whatever, one of the Prokan talks about the Midatayr. And he said, I learned it already. So he told him, go learn a Maimer in Tov Daled. And he said, I learned this already. So the Melech told him, Ebazei, you cannot help. You're a lost case. That's what he told him. You're a lost case. So first he was burning mad. When he came for an Eitzah, and he went to his place, and he was all upset. And then he thought about it, and he realized that he doesn't have an Eitzah from his mashpiyas. He's going to have Chnem in the hand, and he's going to have to do himself. And he realized that that's what the Melech was trying to tell him. That you're not looking for a solution. You're looking for someone to schlep you out and do the work for you. No one's going to do the work for you. You have to do the work. And that's what he told him. And that was the solution. There was the fact that he told him that you have no hope. That was the solution. I don't know if you can try it in Tafshin Pedala, this type of... I wouldn't try it at home. But the kuda is that a mashpia is just guiding you. In other words, the work has to come from you. Okay.
So one of the things when the Igris were published, it was a shtickle sarusa de la'elo, which means that I think the library was publishing various Igris, and then there came a discussion about which Igris should be published next. And the Rebbe, I think the Rebbe said that the Rebbe's Igris should be published. So when the Igris would come out, I think this isn't Tavshim Mem Zayin, Mem Ches, everybody would get the Karach of Igris and learn the whole thing straight away. They didn't come out all in one day. So every Karach that came out, we used to learn the whole thing. So nowadays, perhaps, you have the whole set of Igris, it's a little bit dramatic. But I think a Bacher should definitely make an effort and try during his Bacher Shiyarin to learn through all the Igris, and definitely to learn through the whole Kutasichas, to learn the Rebbe's Mamorim, to be able to learn the Rebbe's Torah in as much as one is able to, and one is able to. I just want to tell a story. Yeah, a story. I can tell you what to do, or I can tell you a story. I think a story is better. So one is a story about the Rebbe's Fabrengen, actually Shloshim Shana, Tovshim Mem, Yud Shvat, and Rabbi Yoshebeh Soloveitchik, who is a prominent modern Orthodox, a prominent Rav in America. He said that he was going to come to the Fabrengen, and he had committed that he was coming to the Fabrengen, I believe, for 1 hour. Rabbi Yoshebeh Soloveitchik was a shtickl yeka, and he came to the Fabrengen for 1 hour. There's a famous video of it that Rebbe stands up when he comes in. But he didn't stay for 1 hour. He stayed for 2 hours. And then he left. And the Rebbe asked Rabbi Krinsky to go visit him and to hear what were his impressions about the Rebbe's Fabrengen. So Rabbi Krinsky went to visit him. He would teach half a week. He lived in Boston, but he would teach half a week in Yeshiva University, so he had an apartment in Manhattan. So Rabbi Krinsky went to visit him. Rabbi Krinsky said, I have a question. I said, I remember you said you were coming to the Rebbe's Farbrengen for 1 hour, and you ended up coming for double that amount. Why did you double the amount of time? So he said, I had a question, and it's a question on the Gemara that says that Yoina Hanavi got Nevuah from being in the Beis Hamikdash by Simchas Beis HaSheva. I said to myself, how is it possible that a person could get Nevuah from being just in the Beis HaMikdash by Simchas Beis HaSheva? In English, it's called by osmosis. Osmosis means just by the avirah, by the atmosphere. He said, when I was by the Rebbe's Farbrengen, I suddenly realized that this is the type of atmosphere that we were referring to, and I couldn't tear myself away. I couldn't take myself away from that atmosphere, from the Rebbe's Farbrengen. Now, the Rebbe's Farbrengen, very, very early on, the Rebbe wanted that they should be videoed, and the Baruch Hashem, they're videoed, and we have the opportunity today to sit down and to watch the Rebbe's Farbrengen on video. And in that sense, we're able, on some level, to be able to get to that, shall we say, experience or connection or osmosis or atmosphere that there is by the Rebbe's Farbrengen. I remember Farbrengen, I think it was Shabbos Bereshis, Tavshin Nun Aleph, and I was standing by my place for Farbrengen, and I saw a fellow come in, and it was a Yid, a Chassid that I knew well, friend of my father's, and I knew that he was undergoing a very difficult situation in his personal life, and I saw the way he came into the Farbrengen, if I could put it, Atzubrochen Yid, he came in very down. And as I watched him go in, I said to myself, this is a Yid that really, if there's somebody that deserves that the Rebbe should lift him up, this is really this is the moment. And at that time, I think it was Tavshin Nun Beis. That's when it was Tavshin Nun Beis, Shabbos Parshas Bereshis. So the way it worked is that they would sing at the beginning of the Farbrengen, they would sing Zol Shon Zayin de Geula, and then after the first Sikha, they would sing the Rebbe's song, which that year was Shuvah. And I remember he turned to the Rebbe, and he was sitting very close to the Rebbe, about where this young man is sitting. And he turned to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe turned to him, and the Rebbe told him to say L'chaim on a big cup of mashka. And he said L'chaim. And then the Rebbe, he's holding the cup of mashka in his hand, and he's singing like this. And this is during the song. I have to be honest, I can still hear it today. And they're singing, ya 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 yoneranno v'nismecha b'chol. And at that moment, the Rebbe turned to him, and the Rebbe began to make with his hands like this. And to be honest, I can see it b'moyei night today. He's standing down there looking up at the Rebbe like this, and the Rebbe is standing there like this, looking directly at him, very clearly, not at anybody else, making with his hands to him. Must have lasted for 20 to 30 seconds, which in that type of situation is an eternity. Later on by the Farbrengen, towards the end of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe told him to say L'chaim again. I don't know if it was, the Rebbe would go like this if it was a big cup, or like this if it was a small cup. I think the second time it was a small cup. Didn't want to, And again, the Rebbe made him, not with the same intensity as the first time, but again, the Rebbe had him stark me'oided gewen. And I will tell you that the person that walked in did not exist anymore when he came to walk out. It was a different person that walked out. He danced out, der ist getanzt. Now, the fact that the Rebbe then guided him what to do and took him out of his tzara, and Baruch Hashem, he was totally clear of his tzara, that to me is a side point of the story. But the tzir of the Rebbe focusing on him and being me'oided him and actually physically lifting him up. So inochinami, it happened to that person. But in some way, each and every one of us have the opportunity to be that person that the Rebbe lifts up. The only thing is, it requires from us the esarusa de latata, that connection, that we connect to the Rebbe. When Gimmel Tammuz happened, so Chassidim, I don't know, I'm not going to say I had a choice, but Chassidim could have said, okay, Gimmel Tammuz happened. Or Chassidim said, we're going to remain continued connected to the Rebbe. And when that happens, that we say that we remain continue connected to the Rebbe, so as mentioned before, Abaya and Rava are not being makusher to him, But the Rebbe is makusha to us because we're connecting to the Rebbe, and we're able to do that in so many different ways, whether it is in Mer Machshava, whether it is in Dibur, whether it is in Maisa, and each and every one of us should find that opportunity where we're able to do that. The question is, yeah.
Okay. I want to go back to the living with the Rebbe's Farbrengen and but I want to go back a little bit. I know we jumped into finding the Heroes in the Rebbe's Torah. I want to go back just for a second, or 2 seconds, and use the language of the Rebbe in a very well-known Sikha, I think it's Chelik Chav, about the uftu of Chassidus, or why we need Chassidus Davka in this generation. And I'm sure you're familiar with the Sikha, but it's a Chassidus Farbrengen, so if I'm saying something that you already know, Istama, you'll forgive me. But the Rebbe is telling over a Sikha of the Friedrich Rebbe. And one of the Mishalim, one of the examples that the Friedrich Rebbe gives is of a group of people going down into a mine to mine coals. That the Chassidus is like a coal that brings light and warmth. And the Rebbe says that there's various things that we have to learn from this. For example, if you go down into the coal mines, you need to know where to go and how to go. There's no ways and there's no map. Maybe there are maps, but you love dafka. You know how to read the maps. You need a leader. And the Rebbe says the leader is the Rebbe, the Nasi Adair. And when you go down into the coal mines to find the light and the warmth for this generation, the way we do so is by folgen. The Yiddish word in the Sikha is folgen. Folgen could mean to follow, and folgen could mean to listen. Listen as in to listen and apply the instructions. And then the Rebbe continues that what you also need to do down there is to breathe. So when you need light, you need someone to tell you where to go, you could follow the person in the front. They have a light like this one that's in my eyes that's blinding me, but if you turn it around the other way, probably it'll give a lot of light, so you put it on the head and you go down, and the person in the front leads the pack, so that way they can go where they have to go. And that's step number 1, so folgen dem Rebbe. But then there's another thing, and that is that you have to breathe. And breathing, says the Rebbe, is limud achsidus. And breathing is something that no one can do for you. You can't say to your friend, I'm taking a nap right now, can you breathe for me for a little bit? And then when we'll switch, and then I'll breathe for you. No such thing. Every person needs oxygen, needs to breathe. Which means that every single person has to learn chassidus. And then the Rebbe says something else, which is obviously, no, there's no such thing as dvarim pshutim. And the Rebbe says something else, that you can't pick a day to breathe and to not breathe. You can't say, I'm going to breathe tomorrow, and I breathed yesterday, so therefore I'm going to take a break from breathing. So too when it comes to learning chassidus, and obviously in this context, we're talking about the Rebbe's chassidus, we have to know that learning the Rebbe's chassidus is oxygen. It's our oxygen, the oxygen of a chassid, it's the oxygen of a bocher. And you can't take a break. You can't say, okay, today I'm taking a break from breathing. Every single day you have to breathe, which means that every single day you have to learn chassidus and you have to learn the Rebbe's Torah. And it's very interesting, for those of you who are still listening, this Farbrengen, it's printed in Lekutei Sichos as Muge, but it's from a weekday, it's from Simchas, not weekday, mamish, it's from Simchas Beis HaSheva Farbrengen. So it's on Ashreinu.app, or what we used to say, it's on a tape. So you could listen to the Rebbe say it, and it's very geschmack. And the Rebbe is in the middle of talking, and the Rebbe says, nicht genug, was mit gelernt nechten. And then the Rebbe says his own name. The Rebbe says, nicht genug der Nechtiker, and the Rebbe says his second name, Mem Ayin, etc. So I was driving my kids to Cheder, and I'm listening with the Sikha in my ears, and I wasn't expecting it. There's like a Shmaka Sikha, and it's easy to just, it's driving, and I'm in a sort of in this bubble, and all of a sudden I hear the Rebbe say his name. So I pulled over the car to the shoulder, and I rewinded. You can't rewind on Ashreinu. You have to start sliding with your finger. It's very frustrating unless you can find that 10, the arrow backwards. Whatever, I rewinded a little bit, and I listened again. And the Rebbe says, "Es nicht genug, was man gelernt Nachten." It's not a verbatim quote. It's not exact word for word. It says, "Nicht genug the Nächtike," and the Rebbe says his own name. So the Rebbe, it was just so fascinating. The Rebbe wasn't just talking to us. The Rebbe was talking to himself. The Rebbe was demanding from us, from himself, that to learn every day. And we hear the Rebbe talk to himself that way. How much more so it applies to us, my friends. We could wax eloquent with a whole bunch of different things we're going to gain, and which is important. But we have to know the foundation that the Rebbe's Torah is our oxygen. Then we could discuss what we're going to eat for breakfast, spiritually speaking, and what's going to be the putter on the bread. But before we get into all of that, the Yesod Kol HaDavar is that in order to breathe as a chassid, in order to breathe as a bacher today, we have to learn the Rebbe's Torah. At least once a day. Actually, if you breathe, you should do it 24/7. Okay. The Rebbe says every day you have to do so. So this is my what I want to share with you today is that with everything else I'm going to say, so the Madat Teterim and Nisrei Mamti and whatever else I could think of saying, the Yesod Kol HaDavar is that a bacher has to know, a chassid has to know that the oxygen, our oxygen, what makes us breathe, what makes us tick, not what do I do, but who am I? I'm a breathing individual. It means I'm a person that learns the Rebbe's Torah at least once a day.
So you can add pratim to this cloud. There is a Yidden Kronitz. He wrote a set of Chumashim with the Rebbe's Sichas rewritten in English, then it came out in Hebrew. Then he wrote a Haggadah, and he wrote a Tillim. So he wants the sponsor of his project, his name is Rabbi Chaim Miller, and the sponsor of his project is a Yidden Kronitz. His name is Rabbi Meir Gutnik. So Meir Gutnik made a bar mitzvah for his son, and this Chaim Miller, Rabbi Chaim Miller, put out a tshuva for the bar mitzvah. So what was the tshuva? He writes in Hakdama what this tshuva is. He says he learned the whole Likutei Sichos, all the Sichos, in order to produce his Sfarim. And then, for whatever reason, he started learning Bilti Mugis, starting Sichos Kodesh, listening to tapes, learning Teres Menachem. And he said he discovered a whole new Rebbe. He thought he knew who the Rebbe was. And he says a whole new Rebbe for the Bilti Mugis. So he decided the English-speaking world has usually their gisha, their accessibility to the Rebbe's Torah is through Likutei Sichos. That's what they spend their time learning. They don't really learn Sichos Kodesh so much, or Teres Menachem. So he took 1 year, Tav Shchav Beis, and all the Sichos where the Rebbe speaks, I don't know how to call it, Musar, or the Rebbe says about Elam Hazeh and Hollywood kitchens and wall-to-wall carpet and going to the country and orange juice before davening with a newspaper and all those Sichos. So he found 1 year, he made a whole kuntus. He translated those Sichos in English from 1 year. I think it was Tav Shchav Beis. So the point is not the tshuva. The point is that a person who learned all the whole Likutei Sichos and he started learning the Bilti Mugis and he suddenly found a new Rebbe, and he was so inspired that it caused him to translate, to let other people into the secret. So we're nicht people that coming through their English. But there's a certain Reichkeit that comes through when you learn a whole Fabring, and I'm saying Dvarim Pshutim, very big, very Dvarim Moed Pshutim, but learn a Bilti Mugis also, besides learning the Mugadic Sichos. That's one prat.
So I know we want to close, but I'll just say one inyan. One inyan about Tzir Pnei Harav. Rabbi Lowenthal was talking about a moment by a Farbrengen, and I've never heard the story before. There's a new story for me. I've never heard it. I've never heard the story about the Sebrachana Yid with the Shuva, with the L'chaim. I never heard it. It's new for me. Right? The shaila is, what should I do with this story? So I know what happened. I just heard about it. Rabbi Lowenthal sees it in his eyes. I don't see it. I was never at a Farbrengen. I've watched a lot of videos. I've heard a lot of Farbrengens. I've never been to a Farbrengen. It's not my fault, so I'm not embarrassed. In fact, I'm almost proud. Right? The Eibishter put me to be born after the Rebbe, is, right, in a period of time that the Rebbe is yet to verbring. We're waiting. I'm really excited. Right? But what's Pshat Tziyur Pnei Harav? Tziyur Pnei Harav is not just to look at a picture of the Rebbe, not just to look at a video of the Rebbe. Tziyur Pnei Harav is that when you're looking at the Rebbe, you are part of the picture. You're in that picture. When you watch a video, picture yourself in the room. Don't picture yourself on the couch, on the chair, sitting in Zal, doing your thing, playing with the tablecloth. You're right now in 770 on the bleachers. You're there. Imagine yourself there. How do I know this? It's even in the letter of the Rebbe for Yud Shvat, for the Yom Elul. The Rebbe explains, Dan Hogis, the Rebbe says, picture yourself in Yechidus. Right? Remember when you were in Yechidus. Tziyur Pnei Harav, you're supposed to be inside the picture. Imagine thinking of that whole story again, you witnessing the story. It might embed a little bit further. Then go ahead and imagine that you were that guy. When you hear a story of the Rebbe, it's supposed to become alive. You watch a video, you're in that video. Right? And if that's the case, it's completely transformative. It changes everything. You walk into the oil, the Rebbe is looking at you. Imagine yourself looking at the Rebbe, and how would the Rebbe look back at you? And it's completely different, right? You might be sad, you might feel grumpy that it's 30 years, Gimmel Tammuz, weiß ich nicht was. Those are all very normal feelings. But I tell you, the Rebbe is not looking grumpy back at you. The Rebbe is looking with pride, with nachas, right? And it's uplifting each of us, because the inyan of a nasi means that he's up, right? He's exalted. Also, the inyan of a nasi is that he lifts us up. Today we all had the schus to be at the oil. We all can be uplifted. And if you weren't uplifted yet, think back to that moment. Think back to those 60 seconds that you're in the oil, and realize that there's an element of tziyur pnei harav. Put yourself in the picture with the Rebbe, and you're going to see that moment in completely different light.
So I believe our 60 minutes is almost up. By the Rebbe's Fabrengen, at least in the last few years that I was able to be at, towards the end of the Fabrengen, and I remember when I was a kid, we used to listen to them in London. We knew there were certain songs, and that meant that the Fabrengen was about to finish. But when I was here by the Rebbe's Fabrengen, it was always the niggin of the Rebbe's father's niggin. And that's a niggin of simcha, of going forward. So Bez Hashem from Gimmel Tammuz, with all of the mixed hergeshim, it should definitely be a hergesh of simcha, of going forward, of marching forward as the Rebbe's Chassidim, and as all of our various speakers have mentioned. So I think with that we'll conclude. Ah, yeah, 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 yeah.
Agresi Yasher Koyach to Rabbi Garari, Yasher Koyach to Rabbi Lowenthal, Rabbi Pevsner, and Rabbi Chazan. I want to present to all the Bochurim here a special kavitz that we printed especially for this event. Kavitz is called Kavitz Nasi Ader. It was originally printed by the Vadat Tamimim 8 years ago for Gimmel Tammuz. And it goes through 3 sugyas in the inyan of a Nasi Ader. This year, especially for this event, we reprinted it with special new additions. So make sure before you leave tonight after the dinner program to take one of these kavitz. Right now, the Seder Getzayin Azay. Many of you received already the kavitz Limud Sichas Kedesh. I'm sure some of you might have learned this Sicha, the Sicha of Yud Shvat Tavshin Mem, where the Rebbe talks about the idea of Shloshim Shana. Very, you say this to Kasicha. So right now, the time is 6:10, and Bezos Hashem, the dinner program will begin around 6:30, so there's still drinks and snacks over here, and everyone should take a Sicha. Zitz and learn. Today, again, is still Gimmel Tammuz. We'll take the day seriously, and then The program will begin shortly.